Us in our own unique way is embarking on a new pathway with each passing day. And even though there may be points and places and moments and times where our paths cross and intersect and intertwine, at the end of the day, no two paths in life are alike. We are all, in some way, shape, or form, blazing new trails. Let me give you an example. I consider myself a very ordinary man that's had some extraordinary opportunities in his life. And I grew up in a single-parent home. My father passed away when I was very young. And growing up, in the absence of having a father figure, my mother and I butt heads quite frequently. I was the young man who thought he knew it all. And so I would venture to say that I always listened to my mother, but the truth is I never listened to my mother. She would nod her head if she were here this evening. So I was blessed and fortunate to attend Rutgers University on scholarship, an athletic scholarship, as a track and field athlete. And you probably are familiar with Rutgers from the Don Imus controversy and the women's basketball team, etc. I attended Rutgers by the grace of God, and in the midst of trying to find myself, as many of us do during our formative years, found myself in a situation transitioning from high school into college where I had a great many things on my plate. I was an engineering student, had its own demands. I was a track and field athlete, had its own demands. I was trying to be involved in student activities, had its own demands. I was trying to be the man on campus, had its own demands. Needless to say, it was my junior year that an administrator at Rutgers pulled me aside and said, "Randal, have you ever thought about applying for a Rhodes Scholarship?" And I said, "I've never even heard of a Rhodes Scholarship," so the answer was no. He said, "Well, you know what, I think you're qualified, because to fast forward, despite the challenges I had in high school, I was able to turn the corner in college and really focus in. So when I got to Rutgers, I was able to eventually finish with a 3.9 GPA. I had one B during all of my years in college. I still say it should have been an A, but that's another conversation. So he said, I think you've got a great resume. You should think about applying." I said, okay, but you know what, I'm too busy. I've got things I'm doing, I'm busy, I've got a lot of different things going on. I'd already started my first company as a 19-year-old. And then I saw him my senior year. He said, "Randal, did you think about what I told you?" I said, "No, I told you I'm too busy." He said, "Well, look, just go talk to the gentleman that coordinates overseas study and just have a conversation." I sat down with the gentleman, saw my resume, said, "Randal, I think you are qualified, you should apply. Just send in the application, you have nothing to lose." I said, "You know what? Fine, I'll send it in." So I sent it in. And I made it to the semifinals, which was on a regional basis. And then I made it to the finals. And I'll never forget the day that we interviewed for the final round of the Rhodes. And if you don't know the Rhodes, it's an international scholarship that pays you to go to Oxford University for up to 3 years. And they read out that, we interviewed over the course of a day, and then we were brought back into a room, all of us, where they announced the winners right in front of us. And they read them alphabetically. They said Dana Brown, Sean Fahey, Randal Pinkett, and Daisha Toll. I said, "You've got to be kidding me." And I became the first African American from Rutgers to ever win a Rhodes Scholarship. You've got to be kidding me. But figuratively speaking, at that point in my life, the road beneath my feet came to an end. The road less traveled became the road never traveled, and I was venturing into uncharted territory. Fast forward, I went to Oxford for 2 years. I came back to America, worked, decided to go back to grad school. I got really carried away. I got 3 more degrees after I finished 2. Ended up with 5. More degrees than a thermometer, I tell you. And so I finished my doctorate work at MIT. I started my first company, or rather, I started my next company for which I worked full-time for the first time, my first full-time opportunity to run a business, an information technology firm, BCT Partners. And I moved back to New Jersey, my home state, where my business partners were also situated. And I got married, my wife moved to New Jersey, she still holds that against me. But I'm upstairs working, and she's downstairs watching a television show called The Apprentice. And she screamed upstairs. Now, I'm going to keep it real with you, since I was late. I'm going to tell you the real story. I'm not going to candy coat it. She said, "Sweetie, have you ever thought about going on The Apprentice?" I said, "No." In fact, okay, I said, I'm going to keep it real. I said, "Boo-boo." Keep it real. I said, "Boo-boo, no." I haven't thought about going on some reality show. I'm too busy. I'm running a business. I'm trying to grow the company. Come on, I'm not down with some reality show. Get out of here. So I went to work the next day, and I came home, and on my desk was the application for the Apprentice. With a little sticky note that said, fill this out. So I looked at it, I said, she thinks she's cute. So I put my own sticky on there that said, I told you I'm too busy. And I put it on her desk. I came in the next day, and back on my desk is the same application. My sticky is gone. There's a second sticky there that says, I told you to fill this out. So I said, okay, let me look at the application. I looked at the sticky. She said, no, it's not that long. It's only one page. She said, just send it in. You have nothing to lose. I said, okay. I'm going to send it in. So I sent it in, thinking I will never hear from anyone again. And about a month later, I got a call from producers on my cell phone. I don't know about you. My cell phone rings, and I don't know the number. I don't pick it up. So it's a voicemail. So I pick up my voicemail, and it says, this is Scott Salyers, associate producer for The Apprentice. We got your application, and we love it. We want to talk to you some more. I said, get out. So I called my wife. I said, you are not going to believe who just called me. She said, who? I said, a producer from The Apprentice. He said, I told you. I said, wait, I'm not on the show yet. They just called. Let me call him back. And then it got really crazy. So I call him back. I go to New York to do an on-camera interview. Then they had me do a 30-page application. Yeah, they got sneaky on me. Then they did a background check, like I was running for public office or something like that. And then I was chosen, then I passed the background check. Then I was chosen as one of 50 finalists to go to Los Angeles. And so we flew to Los Angeles, and we spent a week in a hotel where we were told you cannot leave your room unless you are told. Because I'm a grown man. I can't leave my room. You cannot leave your room unless you're told. So, okay, I can follow the rules. So I'm in my room, and I get these random phone calls at random times to go to random places. I get a phone call. Go downstairs, I take a physical exam. Go back to your room. Get a phone call. Go downstairs, I get a psychiatric evaluation. Get a phone call. Go downstairs, I take a psychological review. Go downstairs, I'm subjected to a deviant behavior test. To see if I'm prone to a deviant behavior. Hurting somebody or wigging out at somebody. I'm still trying to understand why we took that test, because they still put people on the show that go crazy. So why did we take it? What was the point? Anyway, I did all those tests in the first half of the week. The second half of the week is all interviews. Boardroom-style interviews, 5-on-1, 1-on-5, 1-on-1. I get through the interviews. The last day of the week is Friday. I think there were maybe 25 of us left. I get a random phone call. Randall comes down to room 225. I walk into 225, and I see every single person I've seen throughout the entire process. The casting associates, the producers, the medical doctor, the psychiatrist, the psychologist, everyone. And seated in the middle, right about where this gentleman is here in the orange, is the executive producer of The Apprentice, a guy named Jay Beanstalk, seated right in his chair. Everybody else is standing behind him. Jay looks at me and says, Randall, you have one of the most impressive backgrounds we've seen for the show. Let's just keep it real. 5 degrees, MIT, Rhodes Scholar, Oxford, Rutgers, multi-million-dollar firm. You're so smart. Why do you think we brought you down here to room 225? I said, you brought me down here because you're going to put me on the show. He said, you're right. I said, get out! And of course, I called my wife. I said, you are not going to believe what just happened. She said, what? I said, they put me on the show. She said, I told you. I said, wait, I haven't won yet. So long story short, since I don't want to take up all my time, I get chosen as one of 18 people from among 1 million people who applied. 1 million applied, 18 were selected, and only one won, and that was me. But back to my remarks. But again, I was the first, and in fact still the only person of color to have won on The Apprentice. So figuratively speaking, the road beneath my feet came to an end. That the road less traveled became the road never traveled, and I was again venturing into uncharted territory. And if I look down the list of individuals that I referenced before, the Paul Robesons, the Frederick Douglasses, the Coretta Scott Kings, the Marion Wright Edelmans, something that they must have had in common, that I believe is needed now more than ever before, is that they had to have possessed what I describe as